Ako, I am really very sorry. I apologize to everybody, to the public. Much as I would like really to honor the rules, hindi ako makapag... I feel I am muffled when I talk. So, conscious ako. So, it bothers me. It runs afoul with my... matanda na tayo. Mas lalo tayong tatanda nito. Let me just discuss in advance yung dito sa rule about sa itong, hindi naman lahat o OFW, but I think most of them ngayon are housed or billeted sa mga hotels. Yan ang quarantine nila. And much as we would like really to control, even going after itong mga suwail, hindi natin kayang pantayan talaga. What I would propose to do is this. I think that the answer of the hotel is correct. They cannot be doing the police work for the government, itong mga hotels. We can maybe designate them, the hotel, but as to the enforcement, they cannot really enforce itong quarantine. And hindi sila you are delegating a governmental procedure imposed by government. So hindi natin masali na to the extent that we would be doing or abandoning really our supervisory power to the private person or entity. We cannot really, it would not be legally correct to go after the hotel owners or the managers there, or whoever is attending to the needs of the people that are inside the hotel because of quarantine reasons. We cannot transfer the power now of even stopping, if they would want to, if they would insist to go out, the hotel owners or whoever is working there cannot be tasked of or placing the burden of enforcing the rules about quarantine, because only government can enforce it. And we have not even to the extent of delegating them the powers to stop them physically. So that would be a messy thing to do. And we would run, I said, afoul in so many gamut of issues there. They cannot physically, they cannot stop. They have no authority nor the power. Ang makapahinto lang sa kanila, yung government personnel placed or put in there in the hotel to work in the matter of placing people under quarantine. It has to be a government personnel or employee Ngayon, what I propose for government to do is we have yet to see this si Secretary Anyo. Sir, kaya mo maglagay ng pulis sa mga hotels na ginagamit ng quarantine ng gobyerno? 2 pulis in 2 ships para dyan lang.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Nag-usap na po kami ni Chief Philippine National Police General Carlos tungkol po dito. At naghanda na po sila.
Okay. So kayo na mahala sa enforcement.
Opo.
Well, kung mga health authorities, mga empleyado, they can. Because now they are really working upon the orders of the Secretary of Health, kung ganun. Pero kung itong mga hotel employees or owners for that matter, they cannot be in a position legally to stop a person from doing his thing, especially illegal nga, pero walang clear delineation dyan sa what they can enforce and what they cannot. Sa tingin ko, wala pa na siguro. So, walang delegation of authority coming from just the same, it would be a questionable issue. So, ang mangyari, ang police, I thank Secretary Anyo for moving forward. Hindi na kailangan so, ang police na lang. So, the police must have the complete authority to inquire how many, or the health authorities or itong tourism, sila ang magbigay ng listahan doon sa police. And even the hotels, they can provide the information all about everything who is placed under itong mga restricted movements. Yan ang tingin ko. I hope may I ask the Secretary of Justice, tama ba ako, sir?
Sir, with due respect, I can see something in the existing law, more particularly Republic Act number 11332. This is the law or act on mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases with its implementing rules and regulations, Mr. President. There is a provision there on non-cooperation as part of prohibited acts, Mr. President. And it seems to me that non-cooperation on the part of certain entities which are charged with a duty to respond to the pandemic may also be punishable. So these entities, Mr. President, may include establishments which are charged with a duty, for example, as a quarantine hotel, to ensure that people who are quarantined within the establishment should not be able to jump the quarantine regulations. So, with due respect, Mr. President, I think that can also be used.
Yes, but would it be possible for the hotel personnel now to stop physically the person?
Perhaps, Mr. President, the hotel management can devise ways of preventing without appropriate, perhaps by demanding certain proof of the need to go out, like for emergency reasons to see a doctor or something like that. But otherwise, if they will be leaving the premises of the hotel without any justifiable reason or not for any emergency reason, then I believe, Mr. President, that they should not be allowed to exit the hotel. And hotel personnel may be able to do that also, in my opinion.
Physically.
Yes, because supposedly there are personnel in the hotel who man the entrance and the exit of the hotels. And if the hotel has been designated, Mr. President, as a quarantine hotel, then presumably all the occupants of the hotel are under quarantine. So if they cannot present any justifiable reason to go out, like to see a doctor or for medical reasons to go to a hospital, then perhaps the personnel of the hotel may also be able to stop them from leaving. That's my humble opinion, Mr. President.
Yes, I believe you're correct. Pero ang problema niyan is will they be able to stop? Well, this is already it's a done issue. Pare lang sa iba, ngayon lang nakikinig, yung hindi nila, they allow o debar some people under quarantine to go out of the hotel, and if they insist, there would be, I said, some sort of a physical thing, kasi pipilitin mo talaga yung tao at makipaglabanan na, that becomes a problem already.
Yes, tama po kayo doon, Mr. President.
Yung delegated power is not really very clear that they can stop or bar or prohibit. Medyo kulang ang batas.
Yes. Wala po sila talagang coercive, wala silang coercive power to stop. But they can only report kung meron pong violation yung occupant.
Yan ang problema. That's why police na lang. So yung iba, I hope this is nationwide. I think we are. Now, I would like, this short discussion is really to make things very clear. Ang police na lang, because I do not think that pagka pumili talaga, if they force their way in getting out, magkakaroon talaga ng irokos or something, lalo na itong mga babae, makipag-away yan. So, I said, that's a issue to be addressed by the government. And I think Secretary Anyo has done naunahan niya ako. Iniisip-isip ko lang kanina. So, police na lang, 2 policemen assigned to itong hotels that are quarantined, and they also have to keep their mindful of their duty to advise the person, at kung magpipilit, then the power to arrest them, no doubt about it. Yung talagang insistent or anyway, sana wag. Baka sa probinsya medyo so kung kikinig ang lahat ng Pilipino, that's in the meantime, you can call the police. Pero pag umalis na talaga, then it's already the police would be the first responder dyan sa issue na yan. Look for the culprit. The culprit is really yung ayong sumunod. And in that connection, we are facing again a serious problem. Here comes the another variant, Omicron. So again, there's a spike of people hospitalized or needing treatment. Ang problema lang kasi the contamination is so parang aggressive, very fast. And in a short while, nakita natin nag-shoot up ang mga ospital. Ang problema nito, yung isolation preparation natin done a year ago. We can only revive them if they are still existing, same preparations that we did initially. So, may I, para makinig lang tayo, I am no expert. I am here to listen to people who know ang trabaho na ito. It belongs to them. This is a realm of medical issues. I can only listen. But I have to call first the secretary. What is happening? We cannot control it. Impossible. That's what I said before. Whether we like it or not, Omicron will visit us in due time. So pakinggan natin ngayon. Nandiyan naman si Secretary Duque to give us what's happening on the ground. Secretary Duque.
Good evening. Yes, good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
And to my fellow cabinet members, Senator Bongo and E.S. Medi Aldea, and all the other officials who are in attendance, and to higit po sa lahat ang ating pong mga kababayan. Bago po akong magbigay ng updates dun sa ating COVID-19 response and the Omicron variant, ibig ko lang pong ipakilala muli ang ating pong mga panel of experts na pinangungunahan po ni Dr. Edsel Salvania, si Dr. Ana Ong Lim, si Dr. Marisa Alejandria, and si Dr. John Wong. Hindi na po sila naiba sa atin dahil madalas po natin silang inaanyayahan tuwing may mga issues katulad itong mga variants of concern para ibahagi sa atin at sa ating pong mga kababayan ang pinakahuling mga kaalaman at mga datos patungkol po sa nagbabadyang Omicron variant. Mamaya po, matapos po ako magbigay ng madaling National COVID Situationer, ay sisigundahan po ng ating po mga panel of experts. Si Dr. Maurice Salvania ay kanya pong ipapaliwanag at kaklaruhin yung impormasyon na kumakalat na yung pong pagre-retiro ng CDC 2019 novel coronavirus RT-PCR test na mukhang nagdudulot ng kalituhan ay magbibigyan po siya ng paglilinaw patungkol po sa issue na ito. Samantalang si Dr. John Wong naman po ay magbabahagi ng kanya pong mga kaalaman, nakalap na mga impormasyon na credible information at papaliwanag po niya kung ano po ang mga dahilan dito po sa atin nararanasan holiday surge. So dalawa po ang magbabahagi sa atin ng kanilang presentation matapos pong ibigay ko ang updates. So first slide please, with your permission, Mr. President. Unang slide.
Yes.
First slide please. Thank you. So muli, mag-uumpisa po ako doon sa mga pangunahin na mensahe, Mr. President. At ito po ngayon linggo ang ibig po namin ibahagi sa lahat. Una, alam natin na mas transmissible ang Omicron variant sa original at mga naunang variant na nakapasok sa ating bansa. In fact, ang Omicron variant ay mas nakakahawa ng 4 na beses kaysa po sa Delta variant. Kaya naman, napaka-critical na atin na mapaiksi ang intervals ng pagsasagawa ng ating contact tracing, testing, and isolation upang mapigilan natin ang lalong pagkalat nito. Pangalawa po, bagamat mas nakakahawa ang Omicron variant, ipinakita ng mga pag-aaral na nananatiling epektibong panangga ang ating pong kasalukuyang bakuna laban sa nasabing variant. Kaya naman hinihikayat namin ang lahat na magpabakuna upang maprotektahan ang inyong mga sarili at mga kasama sa bahay. Pangatlo po at huli, atin pong nasasaksihan nitong nakaraan na holiday season na naging mabilis matulin ang pagkalat ng COVID-19 dahil sa mga social gatherings. Tumaas po yung social mobility, yung pagkahalubilo ng mga tao, ay ito po ay tumaas. At dahil sa patuloy na pagtaas ng kaso nitong mga nakaraan araw, nananawagan po kami na isuspindi muna ang lahat ng mga mass gatherings. Kasama po dito ang darating na pagdiriwang ng traslasyon. Piliin po natin makilahok dito sa ating mga bahay na lamang upang maiwasan ang pagkahawa at pagpasa ng sakit. Maliban sa mga mass gatherings, kung maaari, piliin po natin ang alternatibong pamamaraan o work arrangements at pagsasagawa ng mga meetings at iba pang mga activities. Gawin na lamang po online. Next slide. Sunod na slide, please. By the way, Mr. President, I am in quarantine since I got exposed to my staff who tested positive last Friday. So bukas po magpapatest ako and hopefully negative. But I'll be under quarantine until the 8th or 10 days in all. Next slide, please.
Are you all right? May lagnat
So far, I'm okay, Mr. President. Wala naman po akong sintomas.
Wala pa.
Next slide, please. Wala pa, sir. Knock on the wood. Sana wala po.
Huwag kang magsakit-sakit na kasi mawalaan tayo ng general dito sa health issues.
Yes, sir. Awan ng Diyos. Mukhang wala pa naman po ang sintomas, Mr. President. Next slide, please. Ayaw gumalaw yung slide natin. Sira ba? Anyway, ituloy ko na lang, Mr. President. No? Para naman sa atin usual COVID-19 updates. Ngayon, January 4, bagong taon, may nadagdag po na naman tayo ng 5,434 na bagong kaso. Talaga pong mataas at mabilis ang pagsipa ng mga kaso, Mr. President. At sa 5,434 na naidagdag sa ating mga kaso, 3,849 ay mula sa NCR. Pinakamataas po ay NCR. Sunod ang Region 4A na 868 ang kanya pong naiambag sa ating total caseload. At ang Region 3 sumunod at 339 at 378 naman sa mga natitirang rehiyon. Para naman sa ating mga aktibong kaso, ang bilang ngayon, ka-4 na Enero, ay nasa 29,809 o katumbas mo nito ay mahigit 1% ng ating mga kabuuan kaso. Ang ating recoveries naman ay umabot na sa 2.779 million, thereabouts, at ang ating recovery rate ay nasa mataas na 97.15%, habang ang bilang ng mga namatay o pumanaw ay nasa 51,604 at ang ating pong case fatality rate ay nananatili sa 1.8%. Ang ating naman positivity rate ay kasalukuyang nasa 14.1%. Ito ay sumipa din, Mr. President, dahil nung mga nakaraan na linggo ay less than 5% po tayo ng positivity rate. At from December 27 to January 2, ito na nga po ang malinaw na pagtaas ng ating positivity rate. Samantalang RT-PCR testing output po natin ay nasa kasalukuyang 29,000 tests kada araw. So kailangan mapataas pa ang ating pong testing output. Ang capacity naman ng ating testing ay umaabot na sa 90 to 100,000 per day. At huli, tumataas ang ating national utilization rates, 24% para sa bed utilization rate, 26% naman para sa ICU beds, at 14% para sa mechanical ventilators. Ang pagtaas na ito ay talagang sadyang mas nakikita po sa bandang National Capital Region. Sunod na slide naman po, next slide, Secretariat. Sa nakalipas na linggo, from December 29 to January 4, next slide, nakapagtala po tayo ng 3,313 average daily cases. Mas mataas po ito ng halos 9 times kumpara sa atin pong naitalang 349 average daily cases noong December 22 hanggang December 28. So ayan, makikita po natin sa slide nito sa bandang dulo. Yan, makikita natin yung graph, kulay blue. Yan po ang kinakatawan niya ng NCR. Malaki pong bahagi ay nasa NCR po. Almost 70% ng mga kaso bago ay galing po sa NCR. So ayan po, nakikita natin yung uptick ng ating pong mga cases. Next slide. Para naman po sa ating case trends, ang buong bansa ay nasa kasalukuyan 400 as a high risk ang ating pong risk ang classification ng buong Pilipinas. Ang buong bansa ay mayroon 448% 2-week growth rate or TWGR. Yan po pagkalampas 200%, talagang high risk na po ang kanyang classification. Yung pong 0% to 200% moderate risk. Yung pong bilang o ang porsyento ng taas ng kaso, kung ito po ay katumba 0 or less than 0, which is a negative value, yan po ay low risk. Pero tayo po, malinaw, sa 448%, high risk po ang ating 2-week growth rate. At meron po tayong 1.66 average daily attack rate or ADAR. Ano po? At ito po ay although moderate risk classification, kung ibabangga po ito sa TWGR, ang kakalabasan po ay high risk. Kanya nag-escalate po tayo to said classification. Ang pinakamalaking pagtaas ng kaso naman ay nakita, as I've said, NCR, nasa kasalukuyang critical risk case, pinakamataas po na risk classification na meron po 1,475% 2-week growth rate at 8.79 ADAR. At nakikita rin na tayo nagpagtaas ng kaso sa regions 4A and 3. Ang region 4A ay kasalukuyang nasa high risk na may 557%. Ang taas din po dito ng kanyang growth rate at 1.6 na ADAR. Habang ang region 3 ay nasa moderate risk na may 339% TWGR and 0.91 ADAR. Ang mga natitirang riyon ay nananatiling nasa low at minimal risk case classification. Next slide. Dito po makikita natin. Next slide. Ang ating pong bed utilization rate, gaya ng nasabi ko kanina, nationally 24% at mas mataas ng 6 na puntos mula nung nakaraang linggo, habang ang ating ICU utilization rate ay kasalukuyang nasa 26%. Mas mataas ng 8 puntos kumpara noong nakaraang linggo. At ang ating pong mechanical ventilator utilization rate ay nasa 14%, mas mataas ng 4 points nung nakaraang linggo. So dito ho, malinaw, lahat halos tumaas ang kanila pong utilization rates from bed, ward, isolation, and ICU and mechanical ventilators. Lalo na po dito rin sa NCR. Tumaas ng 15 points yung kanilang bed utilization rate habang 14 points naman ang kanilang ICU utilization rate. At ito pong 10 rehiyon ay nagpakita rin po ng pagtaas ng kanilang utilization rates for beds and ICU. 11 regions ang nagpakita ng pagtaas. At yung iba naman po ganun din, ang MEC beds ay may 8 rehiyon na tumataas. Kanya tulad ng amin pong nabanggit, ang pagbabakuna ang makapagbibigay proteksyon sa atin laban sa hospitalization at kamatayan dulot ng COVID-19. Kaya naman palalawigin palalo ng gobyerno ang ating pong COVID-19 vaccination program at hinihikayat namin ang publiko na samantalahin ito at magparehistro upang makuha o makumpleto ang inyong primary series pati na rin ang booster doses. Next slide. Ang atin pong death curve naman ay nananatiling bumababa, Mr. President. Sa kabila ng nakikita natin pagtaas ng mga kaso, isa itong patunay na epektibo talaga ang ating pong vaccination program laban sa COVID. At as of January 4 ay nakapagtala po lamang tayo ng 2 namatay. So sana magpatuloy na ganito lamang po na dahil nga marami na po ang nabakunahan, mamaya ipapakita ko po at bibigyan detalye ni Secretary Charlie Galvez at ni Secretary Vince Dizon ang ating pong mga nakamit na patungkol po sa atin bakunahan. So next slide, dito po makikita nakapagbigay na tayo ng mahigit 109 milyon doses ng COVID-19 vaccines. Mahigit 61 milyon individual, thereabouts, no? Ang may first dose, habang mahigit 50 milyon naman ang individual dito ang fully vaccinated na. At nakapagbigay na rin po tayo ng booster sa halos 2 milyon na individual. So hanggang ngayon, ipapakita rin po, ibabahagi ng ating po mga experts na malaki pa rin po talaga ang kabutihan dulot ng ating po mga bakuna. And they remain to have a high rate of effectiveness, yung mga bakuna po natin, laban sa Omicron variant, meron po tayong mga humigit kumulang 81% na effectiveness rate. And against Delta, mga 85%. Kung makumpleto po yung bakuna at mabigyan ng booster doses. Yun po. So, maganda pong kaalaman nito at impormasyon na ating pong nakalap kumakailan lamang. At mamaya, ipapaliwanag din po ng ating mga eksperto. At huling pagbubuod, Mr. President, ang ating bansa ay kasalukuyang nasa high-risk case classification. Gaya ng sinabi ko, 849% ang pagtaas sa atin 7-day moving average of daily reported cases and 448% 2-week growth rate at 1.66 average daily attack rate and 13.4% positivity rate. Samantalang ang ating healthcare utilization rate ay asa 20% at ICU UR at 23%. Nakapagtala naman tayo ng 2 namatay sa unang 4 na araw ng Enero. So mababa po ito. Isa po ito sa ating pinakamababang naitala pagdating po sa mga na pumanaw. Patuloy ating vaccination rate, patuloy na tumataas na 69% halos ang ating target ang nakakuha ng first dose habang 57% naman ang fully vaccinated. So, ito lamang po ako magpawakas, Mr. President, at nakahanda na po akong tumugon o sumagot sa inyo pong katanungan. Meron po tayong 2 expert na magbibigay po ng presentation with your permission, Mr. President.
Sabi ko na nga alam mo, to the listening public, kanyuira lang But yung mga tao na hindi pa nagpabakuna, without really, no offense sa inyo, pero which is the reality ever present in this situation, in the environment, malaki ang tsansa na pag mahawa ka, talagang mamatay ka. So, kukonti naman ang namamatay sa awa ng Diyos, hindi masyado marami. Pero may namamatay pa rin. Sigurado yan ng walang bakuna. Kaya kung mabakunado ka, I mean, there's a defense, however small, na yung bakuna original for COVID-19 is as good for all of the variants. And the variants are, the mutants are nagwawala. Ang mundo ay in a quandary. Lahat tinatamaan, including us. Sabi ko nga, any development doon, may mutant na naman na sigurado. Yung nagpapakuna, pag hindi nagpapakuna, kung tinamaan yon, the risk of dying this year, 2021, is nandyan. So, bahala kayo. Ngayon, kung maghingi kayo ng tulong sa akin, ay sabihin ko, hindi ako magtulong sa iyo. Kasi hindi ka nagpabakuna. Kung mabakuna ka na, wala na akong problema, at saka wala ka ng problema. Ngayon, kung mamamatay ka, o bahala ka sa sarili mo. Kung ayaw, puno na yung ospital ngayon by this time, the contamination is ever growing very fast. Ang defense lang natin, defense that's available to you is really the vaccine that you got earlier, which is the view of, I think, most of the doctors, that kung mabakunado ka, you will just feel a little bit of, hindi naman discomfort. Parang sickness, but it will not be really fatal dahil dyan sa bakuna. It's not because I do not buy the much less aggressive, whatever enters your body and interferes with your system, and you do not have the antibodies there because it's not available in your system, you will die, especially kung patungan ng secondary and whatever. Pneumonia yan ang kalaban mo dyan. So, pneumonia na serious, sabi ng mga doktor, inflamed respiratory system. So, yung hindi magpabakuna at nalaman ng mga barangay captain, sabihin na lang nila, huwag kang lumabas. At kung malabas ka, you'll be escorted. If you force the issue, I said, because the barangay captain is a person in authority, he can place you under arrest and daling ka sa istasyon. Doon ka sa mabaho na hindi ang istasyon, hindi masyado maganda ang hygiene ng yung jail. Doon na yung mga tao kasi umiihi, doon na rin dumi-dumi. May mga istasyon na walang maniwala kayo. Kaya doon kayo ilagay ng you will be arrested, and at least I think the fiscal can hasten the proceedings by preliminary investigation na kaagad. At pagkatapos na kung i-file yan, you go straight to jail. At ang masakit niyan, before you can work on anything, you'll suffer the sinasabi kong hindi na maganda na sitwasyon. Because not all public structures are really, it's not the best, the best shelter to be there. I'd like to call first si Dr. John Wong. Can you give us the insights of the surge, the holidays? Will this will the additional restrictions of converging of people and crowding and that not really obeying the distancing rule, ano ho ang nakuha ninyo judging from what's happening now? Dr. Wong?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I have a short presentation, if I may be allowed to present it.
Yes.
I think I can answer some of your questions with that presentation also. Thank you. So here are my recommendations now on the holiday surge that we're experiencing now. We need to administer the vaccination program efficiently, meaning vaccinate those population groups that will yield the greatest benefit, meaning these are people whose hospitalization can be prevented or whose lives may be saved by vaccination. So it's in this order now, the benefit: elderly, other vaccinated, and then boosters. And then this month, we have several super spreader events now that are coming up. And this crowding, close contact, and maybe even unmasked, can lead to higher surges. So these are Translation, January 9, Santo Niño, I think 16, and Chinese New Year, February 1. So we have to be able to tell people to avoid these events. Because of the very fast transmission of Omicron, we need wider spread use of antigen tests. Even the cheaper ones are about 300 to 400. So people have to be able to access this. And then to preserve our health system, our hospitals, encourage home care of mild cases. There are also a couple of outpatient medicines that are available now for people at risk. This can be administered on an outpatient basis to prevent hospitalization. These have to be made more affordable when they enter the country. And finally, we need better communication to change the public's behavior in terms of crowding, physical distancing, wearing of masks, and attending these super spreader events. Next slide, please. So, although we still don't have widespread sequencing to find out what proportion of our cases are Omicron. The rapid rise in cases looks like the signature of Omicron. Omicron doubles every 2 days, and this is what's happening. So what's been causing this? The SWS had a survey early in December, and 46% of the respondents said that they intend to celebrate Christmas with family and friends who are outside of their household, meaning outside of their bubble. And looking at the curve, I think they actually did that. And then we had imported infections. About 440,000. There were 140,000 arrivals last December alone. Then we have the Omicron variant, which has a very short incubation period. So it can become infectious in 3 days, rather than the 5 days of Delta or the original variant. Then we have reports of quarantine being very loose. People not staying the whole 14 days or during their quarantine, exiting to purchase groceries and going back. And then with regards to our vaccination program, we need to protect the elderly and the unvaccinated. Next slide, please. So how do we bring the surge under control? No? So we have to look at these three super spreader events that are coming up, no? And negotiate, no, with church authorities, no, to cancel them. No? For Chinese New Year, also encourage other ways of celebrating it without mixing with other households, no, or with friends. For antigen test kits, no, we have to make this available, no, because even at 400 pesos, no, it's still out of the reach, no, out of the it's still unaffordable, no, to a lot of to the majority of Filipinos, no. For the antiviral pills, no, we have to make sure that they're affordable, no, bring them under price control. No? For the mild cases, no, encourage them to isolate at home, no, and have their medical needs attended to by telemedicine. And finally, for our vaccination program, no, just like the successful NVD that we had last year, where we vaccinated 3 million in a day, I think we can vaccinate all the elderly in just a few days, no? Because there are only about 2.8 million of them. No? If we vaccinate this segment of the population, we can actually prevent 80%, no, of the hospitalizations, no? And reduce the strain, no, on our health system. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the distribution of vaccine supply, no, in terms of number of doses per capita. No? So it shows that NCR has received the most number of doses per capita. No? And most of the other regions that are above the national average are from Luzon. No? Visayas and Mindanao, no, have received less. No? The best way to the best use of vaccination, no, to in a surge, no, is to administer the vaccines before the surge, no, and we're fortunate that the current surge has not reached, no, outside of NCR and Calabarzon, no, so we still have time, no, to raise the vaccination levels, no, of these regions. Next slide. This is an SWS survey. It says that about 30% of people say that there are no vaccination sites in this area. No? So once we get the supply to the regions, provinces, and municipalities, we have to make sure that sites are available, no, near where they live. No, the rule of thumb is people will access services if they're within 30 minutes travel, no, to that service. Next slide. In terms of vaccine confidence, no, although we've increased vaccine confidence by several magnitude, no, over a few months, no, there's still some gaps, no. So, for example, people with fewer years of schooling, no, less than a high school education, no, still have a high level of vaccine hesitancy. Likewise, no, in Visayas and Mindanao, no, their vaccine confidence is much lower, no, than the other areas. No? So we have to focus and tailor, no, our health communication, no, to certain demographics, no, and certain cultures, no, and dialects. Next slide. This is the vaccine coverage for the elderly. So the national level is on the left side, no, the maroon bar, no. So a lot of regions are below that national level, no, especially Visayas and Mindanao. No? So we have to bring those regions up as high as possible, no, as much as possible, 100% coverage, no, so that we can protect the elderly and prevent deaths and hospitalizations. No? So I was happy to hear that NCR is going to have a vaccination day for the elderly. No? I think this will top up the vaccination, the elderly vaccination in NCR. So I hope that can be replicated also in other regions. For the elderly, the problem is not supply. The problem is really vaccine hesitancy. So we need to do some social preparation first. Raise their trust in the vaccines. Raise their trust in the vaccinators and in the services that are provided, so that they will come when we offer these vaccines. Next slide. And finally, so this slide, what this slide shows is the priority for vaccination should be people who don't have the primary series yet, because vaccinating somebody who is unvaccinated is 5 times more effective, than adding a booster to somebody who's already vaccinated. Because these people, even if their immunity is depressed with Omicron, still have some immunity, unlike the vaccinated who have nothing. Next slide. So just to summarize, we need more efficient vaccination. We need to avoid the super spreader events. And so, Mr. President, this is the answer to your question. We have to avoid these super spreader events, especially with Omicron, because it's highly more transmissible. Although it is said that it's less severe, it's milder. Only the hospitalization is reduced by 1/3. However, it's 4 times more transmissible. So the net effect is that hospitalization will increase by 1/3, because of the higher number of cases. So we need more antigen tests, to be accessible to the community, to teach people home care of mild cases, and make outpatient medicines more affordable. And of course, better communication to change the public's behavior. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you through with your presentation, Dr. Wong?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Itong yung second sa slide mo sa graphics, meron kalagay doon which has to be avoided or should not take place, or really for government to insist itong mga super spreader kagaya ng I'd like maybe the priests or the bishops are listening. The government does not impose the rules now. It does not really it does not have the character of an imposition, but rather a request from government for everybody to follow the guidelines set to prevent the widespread again of the super spreader that they have mentioned, Dr. Wong. I am referring now to itong super spreader na let me just cite you. The Metro Manila Roman Catholics, you must understand that this is really not intrude into your activities. But ang Roman Catholic kasi every year nagkakaroon ng procession na Black Nazarene. And sometimes yung mga attendees ng pupunta doon would reach a million mark or even plus. Itong procession na to, it's a very important event for the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I have to appeal to them for their understanding and to really look at it in the broader context of our liability also to the people if we do not act correctly or fail to come up with measures to protect public interest and public health. You know, the ministant functions of government are for government to come up with measures that would protect all kinds of sa the scope of governance is you have to come up with measures to protect public health, public safety, public order, the public, the general welfare of the people. So I apologize in advance, and I beg your full understanding of what we have discussed every talk to the people. We have stressed that our job is really to come up with critical decisions to protect public health and public safety. Kung nakinig ang Roman Catholic Church, I am now appealing to you to forgo and cancel all physical gatherings, including the procession and the celebration of Mass sa church. Because marami yan sila. There are millions of devotees there. And you cannot just be complacent about the transmission of the disease. Sana maintindihan ako ng Roman Catholic that all gatherings are not allowed. Never mind about power of government. This is just an appeal to the hierarchy of the church to look at it on a broader understanding that it would really be a super spreader as sinabi ni Dr. Wong. Kaya mapipilitan ako na maghingi ng tulong sa lahat ng konektado sa church, especially in the governance of the region. We will just siguro send somebody to bring the letter, a formal letter. But I know in advance, I apologize for this, but I have to do it because I have to do it. Wala akong magawa. That is the advice from you and this government and all doctors, actually, I suppose. This is not a conjecture, but most of the doctors that I have talked, except yung mga ayaw rin magpabakuna, they are a different kind of tribe. Ewan ko kung anong tribo nila. Basta may mga doktor ayaw. Huwag kayong makinig doon. Makinig kayo sa gobyerno kasi ang gobyerno nakikinig rin sa doktor. Na ngayon, kung magpayabangan tayo sinong magandang doktor, hindi panahon yan. Then we cannot protect public interest and public safety. So, sana maintindihan ng you have to forgo with the procession sa Black Nazarene, including sa church. Kasi marami yung devotees, I said, and if you deprive them of the procession, they might want to go there to just pray to the Black Nazarene. Eh ako man, I said, I believe in God. Walang problema yan. But I have to do things which I hate to do. As I said, pero kailangan gawin ko bakit trabaho ko. And this is not my decision. This is called C-U-L-L-D, called from the so many views and opinions from several doctors. Importante na si Secretary Duque would agree to na so kasi kung magsabi siya na optional yan, medyo may problema na ang gobyerno. And governance really starts from dito because we belong to the executive department. We execute laws. Ang batas sa Congress yan. Pag-implement or execute the laws that they have legislated belongs now to the executive department. Kaya executive, because you have to execute the laws that are passed by Congress. Garon para maintindihan ninyo. Just a few minutes ago, the Secretary of Justice binasa niya yung mga pertinent kaya yung gray area, tawag naman yan, gray areas, kagaya nung sa to discipline or to prevent a guy. Pero okay na yan ngayon because Secretary Anyo said they had already planned before I arrived. Galing na rin ako sa probinsya. Nagplano na sila kung anong gawin. So I appreciate their zeal sa trabaho nila. So yan ang mga if there is somebody to blame actually, it's the Omicron itself. Doon tayo magalit dyan sa wala man tayong except for magagalit lang kami na kagaya niyang ayaw magpabakuna tapos you are known or you have that reputation generated by your refusal for the vaccine and that is known in the neighborhood or in the municipality. Tapos you are reported by the barangay captain na hindi nagpabakuna yan. So the barangay captain has to verify and validate the report at kayo ang first line of sa defense, lalo na sa enforcement of the laws, because the barangay captains really are persons in authority. Sila mismo. Hindi pa nga yung mga lahat ng police, due respect to, they are called agents of a person in authority. Sa linya namin, sa taas, pero sa baba, wala na eh. Pero itong barangay, kanila yan. So, barangay captains, you are put on notice and the order for you to find out the persons who are not compliant with the laws or the refusal to have the vaccines. You can actually prevent them from leaving the house. And if they refuse, because they are persons in authority, you can just insist and arrest him. Kung may pulis na lang ang utusan ninyo. Pero pag walang pulis as a person in authority, you can now use reasonable force for him not to continue with this jaywalking sa daan. Kasi you pose a danger to the society. And kung maglaban ka at napukpok ka ng police o barangay captain, and if that is really the issue, whether or not you obey the law, tapos lumabang ka, then it's kailangan, because, remember, this is the side. When you are placed under arrest, marami lang lang to. Kaya yung iba lumalaban kung ganon. Kaya punta noon sa bar, arestado kayo na. Nag-inom lang kami dito. Pera naman namin to. So you are now arrested. If you are arrested, the duty of the police is to inform you that you have committed a crime and that you have to obey government by going with him to the station. At doon, book ka for whatever act that you have done that's illegal, tapos laglagay ka sa prisuhan. Yun. Ngayon, kung kailangan na ito tandaan ninyo, para maintindihan ng lahat kung bakit minsan nakikita ninyo nagbugbog yung pulis at talagang nagagrapple, ito ang tandaan ninyo. Hindi yan sabihin ninyo police brutality. Kasi kung ayaw ninyo magpa-aresto, then the police is negligent of his duty to place the offender or the culprit under his control. Kaya pag inaresto mong tao, tapos sabihin ng pulis, sumama ka sa akin sa istasyon or the barangay captain. You come, we should go to the barangay hall for you to be investigated. Pag ayaw mo, the order of arrest is, you are placed under authority, and yung offender is, as a citizen, you are under order to submit peacefully. Sabi ang police ito, arestado ka. Pwede bang sumama ka sa istasyon? At pag ayaw, then the police is allowed to use kapitan reasonable force. What is the kind of force? Well, commensurate of what force is also being employed by the person in authority. So dadalhin ka doon sa istasyon, hawakan ka. Pagka lumaban ka, kaya may batuta yung pulis talagang paluin ka. Yung ako naman, sabi ko, paluin lang sa paa. Lalo na yung mga lasing. Bakit? Pera mo ba itong, ganun yan walang pulis-pulis dito kasi amin itong ininom namin. Sino ba yung pulis dyan? Si Carlos, hindi ko kilala yan. Ganon yan may connection ako. Kilala ko si General, itong si Major, walang kilala ko si Congressman. Tapos lumaban, he will have to use reasonable force. Yung reasonable lang. To maybe disable you to resist. Because once you resist the arrest, you are now also committing a crime of resisting arrest. And if you hurt or you put up a good fight, tapos na in the person, the agent of a person in authorities, the police, the military, ikaw ang kawawa. May kaso ka na, patros lumaban ka pa. Yung iba, hinihila talaga. So, minsan, yung hinahampas yung paa, o ano, pagka sumama ka. Now, pagdating doon sa istasyon, huwag mo sabihin na pinalo ng pulis yan. Hindi ikaw yung hindi sumama. The duty of a citizen is when the police announces authority, you have to, guys, keep your cool and do not argue. Total pagdating doon sa pag imbestiga ka na at nakulong ka, and if you find a ground to file or sue the police, you can always do that. At itong tinasabi ko ngayon, ito hindi naintindihan ng human rights. Lalo ng mga bata. Pag ang bata ay inuli na talagang mag-grapple sa iyo. I have seen that many times. Ngayon naman, yung pulis na nakikita nila na parang nagbabakbakan at binatuta yung tao, sigurado yan, lumaban. Kasi kung walang resistance, if there is no violent resistance, there is no reason at all for the police to inflict. It only becomes a sin pagka ayaw mong sumama kasi ang order sa pulis, saan niya dalhin? Alang-alang sa restaurant. When you are arrested, talagang dalhin ka sa, you not bring him to a restaurant and should be brought to the police station for documentation and investigation. And kung if you are detained, then you start to look for a lawyer. Kasi pag hindi, minsan may preliminary investigation na summary, or not really summary, what nandyan na, lalo na yung itong people that are arrested in connection with crimes. Pag inaresto ka ng pulis, diretso ka na, dalhin ka sa istasyon, at maghingian sila ng preliminary investigation summary. You will be investigated right there and then, and the fiscal now will decide. Pag sinabi siyang i-file ko yung kaso, you remain in this time inside the jail. Ganon ang takbo ng maraming hindi kasi nakakaintindi. Kala nila kung kita nila yung pulis nakipagdumugan dyan, because his duty is to bring you under the authority of government and bring you to the police station. Kaya marami dyan ang hindi nakaintindi, lumalaban. Bakit mo ako dalhin na maghanap pa ako ng abogado? Well, I'm sorry, but that is not the law. You can call your lawyer if you have the cell phone, but you have also to honor the authority of government and surrender and go with the police to the station. But nobody would prevent you from calling somebody. You can call your family, your father. Yan ang tandaan ninyo yan, ha? Kasi maraming hindi nakaintindi talaga ng, alam ko, kawawa ang pulis eh. Kasi yung mga bata, may isang senador, Pangilinan. Noon, below 8, no criminal liability yan. Below 9 rather. I'm sorry, below 9. Above 9, under 12, tignan ng fiscal o if there is really malice or a violent character. Noon, 12 hanggang 16, apply na yung law. Pero usually, yung bata talagang nire-release. Here comes Pangilinan. You know what the guy did? Yung problema natin ngayon. Yung mga hold-upper na, yun yung nakikita ninyo noon na sa Dewey Boulevard. Nakikita ninyo nag-snatch takbo dito, takbo doon, nakukuha sa camera. And do you know, I said, why they are so bold to do that, daring? Because they have been previously, sa experience nila, under the Pangilinan law. Hindi ka makulong. Kung yung 15 years old, papasok ka ng bahay, sasaksakin ka, patayin ka, tapos kunin mo yung kinuha yung pera. Pagdating doon sa stasyon, sabihin ng police, report ng recorded, go where you want. That increase the number of crime tenfold. Fiscal na ako noon. Sabi ko, napakagagong. And the Congress that went along with it. Yung mga abogado, tanungin ko siya, buhay pa man kayo. Yung members of the Congress, hindi pa ninyo binasa ng gusto yan? Kaya doon nagsimula ang police na magsabi, minor yan, huwag yan. Hindi yan. Kaya lumalaban. Even if it's a minor, and it's a grievous offense, dadalhin talaga sa estasyon yan for recording. Kasi may complainant eh. Hindi mo pwedeng bitawan dyan na basta-basta palakarin mo lang. Even if they are minors, but even if there is a Pangilinan law. Actually, wag kayong bumoto. Ang dalawa lang yan. Gordon pati Pangilinan. Matagal na yan dyan sa Senado. Tanggalin ninyo yan. Kaya yan talaga ang mga, ito siguro, pareho lang utak. Ito si Pangilinan, talagang hindi niya ginamit yung utak niya. Nag-seminar sa Harvard, paano yan? Pagbalik, American law na. Ang sa American law, the minors are not released back to the streets. There is a halfway house where they are detained there until a judge would decide na sinunod niya ang batas ng Amerikano, wala man tayong halfway house. So anong ginawa? Dito, pag naaresto, they are brought to the DSWD. Because, galit ako Galit ako kay Pangilinan, actually. Hindi galit na Hindi galit na, ganoon talaga ako pag nasanay, mayor. Yung helpless ang public, helpless ang gobyerno. It's actually catch-22. Pag inaresto mo ang pulis, ang ikulong niya, ngayon, ang pulis mo, ang karamihan dyan, actually ganito. Alam mo bakit ang pulis hesitant? Allow me this time to give you some inner thoughts sa gobyerno. Ang pulis, pagka sinabi minor, hindi na pupunta yan. Kasi yun ang pulis, sinong nag-hold up? Kasi ilang taon yun? 13, 14. Wala yan. Arestuhin na. They cannot even force the child to bring to the station. Kaya lumaki yan, marami yan sila. Yung nakikita mo noon hanggang ngayon, yung kinukunan ng TV na naki-snatch tapos tumatakbo. Yun ang dahilan dyan. Kung mayroon man alam mo bakit sa totoo lang. Hindi ko talaga naintindihan. Mayor ako noon, I have criticized Pangilinan almost, talagang nagmumura na rin ako kasi galit ako. Okay na sana yung below 9, wala talaga yan. Baski anong gawin man, baski sunugin ka niyan, okay lang yan. Hindi mo talaga above 9, below 12, tignan nilang kung may malis ba. Gaya ng rape, 12 years old o acts of lasciviousness. Pero yung petty crime na nakaw-nakaw dyan, ako nung fiscal ako, dinidismiss ko. Kasi, nakaw-nakaw lang, nakaw ng ano. Pero nung yung mga above 12, below 16, may indeterminate sentence. Nagtitimpla kami. Para i-recommenda namin. Pero ito, haros. Pagdating sa Pangilinan Law, below 18. 17 years old, patayin nila 16, 17. Pasukin ka sa bahay at saksakin kayong lahat. Kunin yung pera ninyo. Bye-bye. Ganon yan. Kasi kaya mga rape, kita mo yung mga bata. Kahay sa drugs. It's a new year. Let me dwell dito from the standpoint of the executive department. Yan ang, ngayon, sinong pinapadala ng droga? Itong human rights na itong makinig kayo. Sinong runner nila sa droga? Mga bata. Bigay sa kanila, sabi niya, ibigay mo sa tao doon nakatindig. In the process, pag nahuli na interdict, kasi may nag-report, o alam na nakuha yung shabu. So, pagdating, ilang taong ka? 16? Umuwi ka na. Alam mo, ang sindikato niyan, magdala ng photostatic copy ang itong mga runner nila. Pag-aristo ng police, yung birth certificate ko, tignan mo. Ganon kalala ang ginawa ni Pangilinan. Now is as good as any other time to talk about it. It affects our safety, our interest, the safety of our children. Kaya nag-hit-hit na yan. Ang bayad niyan, sige, bigyan ka. Ito, mag-hit-hit ka. Tapos i-deliver mo yan dyan sa mga bahay na yan. Yan nagkalala yung problema ng... Buti sa Davao kasi may program ako every Sunday. I talk to the people. I communicate with you, all Filipinos. Na ganun ang sitwasyon. Ang nanaglaro dyan, mga kriminal, pati ang mga bata ginagawang kriminal at binibigay so that may craving ang bata, the trabaho niya is the career. Kaya ako galit talaga sa droga. Yung ICC, sabihin ko sa kanila, galit talaga ako sa droga. Yan ang statement ko. Galit talaga. Huwag mo ako as mayor and as president, do not fuck about. Do not fuck me. Kasi makita mo na, kita mo ba yung putulan ng ulo ng mga gago? Iuwi siya, away sila, putulan ng ulo yung asawa. Yung mga ganon. Yung bata dyan bata sa Makati na tinali dyan it was spread like a chicken, pinatay. Yung mga rape kasi pagka yung nagdodroga ka, lumalabas yung animal instinct mo, not the human instinct, but animal instinct na takes over the mind. Kaya pag nuno ka, makikita mo rape, patay. Trial tayo. Pero ako, I'm a Filipino. If I go to jail, I go to believe it. Filipino ako eh. If there is somebody who would try me, it should be judge who is a Filipino because I'm a Filipino. Kung may prosecutor man mag-prosecute sa akin, it should be the fiscal because I am a Filipino. Putang ina, bakit ako magharap ng mga puti? Kaya ako hindi yan sinuplado. Makulong ako makulong, okay lang, basta Filipino judge. Bakit ako magharap dyan sa mga puti? O sa Europe, sinurte ka. Tapos makulong ka doon sa... Di ako Kaya I do not recognize the ICC. At saka yung batas na ICC, never yan naging batas. That's what I'm telling them. And itong mga kandidato na ito, sabi na they will revive. Go ahead. Be my guest. Because ang requirement kasi ng treaty, ginawa yan sa Congress. So Congress, depende kung sinong gustong gumawa. The idea of a congressman or senator or an idea coming from the Justice Department or whatever, yan. They legislate, then we enforce. Kaya ako, mayor noon, nakita ko yung ano nang pinaggagawa ng sabi ng mga pero in front of the nation, I tell you, never ako nag-utos ng pumatay ng bata pati babae. Pero sabihin ninyo ngayon, ilang pulis na ang namatay na lumaban ng mga durugista? It should be an interesting question to ask the human rights. Bakit? Ilang pulis na? Ilan na ang asawa na biyuda na? Because of drugs. Ilan na yung mga bata ngayon na wala na tatay at pulis namatay? Because of drugs. Enforcement. Buti sana kung sabi mo na ito lumalaban talaga. Sinasabi ko na sa kanila, ang durugista may armas yan. Bantay kayo, sinasabi ko sa mga pulis, again and again, bantay kayo, kaya hindi yan magpahuli ng... That's why we have this disorder in this country. Ano na presidente ako, sabi nila, I reduce crime by almost 40%. Or sabi sa 60 ba? The statistics are there. Ayaw ko magyabang. I do not want to pull my own chair. Hindi ko na kailangan yan. I have all the accolades and applause to last me a lifetime. Pakana ko lang yung magtakbo akong presidente para we were trying to politika lang yun. Pero ayaw ko na, actually ayaw ko na. Tapos na ako. Ayaw ko na talaga. Pero yan ang sabi ko. I will never apologize for the death of those bastards. Patayin mo ako, kulungin mo ako. I will never apologize to. Then ang pangako, di ba ang pangako ko na if you cared to, ano ang pangako ko? Law and order. Drugs, sabi ko, mag-focus ako sa drugs. Yan ang sinisilip nila eh. Yun sa human rights. Yung 6 aliens na sabi ko sa kanila, do not do it in my city. You will never go out alive. Itong 6 aliens, lumaban, kasi nakaano ng baril na dalawa. So dalawa lang lumaban, pero nandoon sila sa nagtago sila sa isang, they crowded in one corner. They are, ang volume ng fire, two guys firing 45. Yun ang nangyari. So yan. Tapos, dinisplay ko yung katawan nila dyan sa highway. Tapos, human rights. Kasi daw, brutal na po. Anong brutal? What about their brutality to the children of this country? Kaya nga sinabi ko, I came out with it. And it is really true yesterday, and it is true when I step down. You destroy my country. You bring disorder, and you destroy the lives of our children. I will kill you. I admit that. Sinabi ko yan. At sinabi ko sa pulis, do not be afraid ng kaso. I will back you up. But do it in accordance with law, and if you have to kill, mas gusto ko mamatay na yung mga karamihan ngayon nagkakapiyansa. Tapos sila pa ang matapang. Ngayon there's a offing trouble dyan sa Osamis na naman. Kaya isang mayor binaril at a distance. Sniper. So I'm going to that place again. Yung Coratong Baliling na yung namatay na si Parahinog. Is the Parahinog family who's still controlling. Ito yung mga drugista. So sabi ko, make no mistake about it. Pagka nag-inkwentro, lumaban ka kasi ang order ko to take you. Dead or alive. Ayaw maniwala ng human rights. Wala daw yan. Anong wala? Noon pa yan, that's the practice. Even in America, reward sa mga cowboy noon movies, reward, dead or alive. So sabi ko, I want them dead. Hindi ko sinabi na you execute them while kneeling down with their hands up in surrender. Hindi naman niya, kasi parang hindi ka lalaki. Pagka ganon, you're playing God. Pero wala kaming nangyari. Not na alam ko. Kasi hindi, nagle-lecture ako sa Police Academy sa Region 11. I was a lecturer. I never lectured about killing a criminal while lying on his knees, on bended knee. Pero sabi ko, pag lumaban, puruhin mo na. Kung dala mo ang Armalite mo, huwag lang isang putok. Pagka lumaban, if there is a violent resistance, yung Armalite mo is about 20 rounds, ubusin mo na yung gusto mo. Pagka lumaban. And what is the thin line of when the life of a law enforcer is also placed in jeopardy or baka mamatay siya, puruhin na niya. Tamaan mo sa, if you hit him in the stomach, he will still have the strength to pull the trigger. Wala, sa lahat lang yan. Madidisgrasya ka pa. And centrally, I do not want my policemen and my military guys to die needlessly. When as a matter of fact, yun dapat yung isa ang mamatay. Kaya yan sila na ang bunganga ako. Ayan, ang totoo eh. Kasi nakikinig yung mga abogado. Yan that's the rule, actually. Yung ibang ano lang, kasi takot pag election, drug money, tapos yung kagaya sa nangyayari ngayon, may mayor in a gathering sa Christmas, pinatay ng umamil man siguro ang target nun. Uminal. Si Uminal ang nandoon rin eh. Tumindig yung mayor, pagputok sa ulo, tinamaan. Itong kuratong baliling na to, sabi ko, they pose a danger to society. They have challenged the authority of government. Kay may mayor sila doon na, ayun, sad to say it in public, yung mayor doon was the kingpin. Siya ang nagluluto doon sa Osamis. Kaya mga taga... They are challenging the authority and they are asking for it. Kaya ayaw mo mamatay in the hands of the police. O you stop your dirty business of crime. Masabi ko nga nito, we will in a few months baba tayo. Yung inumpisahan na nila yung mga anti-drug yun, mga mayor na yun eh. Anak ng waiting. I hope the police and the military will continue. Huwag kayong I have to explain kasi hindi nila alam yung, hindi lahat. Yung under sa akin, sa klase nila, yung sa lecture ko, yun yung nakakaintindi. Meron akong inatyan. Yung kailangan na yun hindi na. Yung tao, pag inaresto mo, dalhin mo yan. Pag hindi mo nadala sa istasyon, you are negligence. It's a crime. Negligence of duty. Sabi mo, ayaw mo, huwag mo pumasok dyan kasi may armas yan mo, kabarilan pa. Kung gano'n kang pulis, di umalis ka dyan. Arestuhin mo. Then, kung lumaban, use force. Commensurate. Kung kahoy lang, tapos baril lang, bakit mong barilin ng... yan ang New Year ko sa, para maintindihan ng tao. Human rights, kayo sa baba. Try being the policeman. Hindi madali, tapos mademanda pa yung mga pulis. Marami dyan na demanda sa So I'm helping them. Every military or police officer who is facing charges for a crime connected with the performance of his duties, tinutulungan ko. Wala akong, without exception. Kaya, pero kung may pulis, magpunta sa akin noon, mayor ako, magsabi siya na binugbog siya ng asawa niya na pulis, lasing pa. Pinupuntahan ko yung pulis, bugbugin ko yan sa harap ng asawa niya. Ganon ang style ko. Talagang, sabi ko, anong ginawa sa'yo? Dito sinipa ako, mayor. Ano pa? Dito tinamaan ako suntok. Ano pa? Nakahiga ako, mayor, tinadyakan ako. Yan ang istorya. Ako naman, teka, putang ina mo, sipa, suntok, abutin na rin. They behave, pinaka-behave na pulis ang Davao. Totoo yan. Tanong mo yung pulis. Magdemanda ka, siya magdemanda ka. Yan, that's connected now with the how the rules of government or rules of life and law are being played out. Yung barangay, pagka pinuntahan ka, sinabi huwag kang lumabas. Huwag kang lumabas. Kasi pag lumabas ka, guyurin ka doon, guyurin na siya, hatakin ka doon sa ano. And, yan. Pero yung pulis na abuso, yan ang ayaw ko. Talaga, totoo yan. Yung pulis magpaputok. Minsan, Davao noon, brrrr. Saan yan? Tawang pulis. Saan yan? Sir, bandang ano yan? Punta ka doon. Puntahan ko yung pulis. Bakit ka nagpaputok? Marami dito. Sir, ano lang sir, celebrate. Happy-happy para putang ina mo. Ka sa baba. Bumaba ka dyan sa bahay mo. Ito, birthday mo. Bugbugin. Bugbogation. Ito. Pero pulis nagtatrabaho, huwag kayo matakot. Mismo pera ko ipuposta ko sa iyo. Kasi yan ang utos ko eh. Huwag kang matakot magtrabaho. Kung kita mo, your life is in danger, you proceed accordingly. Kasi may criminal yan sila na ano, sa Police Academy. Ang hinahawakan ko noon, yung criminal law, criminal procedure, pati criminal evidence. Yun ang ano. Pero nung fiscal ako, nakikita ko na yung what's evolving at that time in my city. But because fiscal ako, I can only act if there is already a crime. Kung magdating sa amin for investigation. But hanggang dyan lang. Doon mayor ka, you can preempt. Maghanap pa ng away. Ganyan ang mga mayor, pag nademanda yan sila, ganun kagaya sa polis. Sinabi ko lang, anong nangyari? Ganun sir. May police assistance tawag. Sige. Palamin mo lang kung bigyan kita abogado. So much for, is there somebody in the panel? Wala kasi yan, doon nakalagay lang si Dr. John Wong. Is there somebody, si Ana Lim pati si Alejandria? May you have something also to add? Maybe for government to call all views to come up with a... So if anybody there, kasi pagkatapos ninyo, you may makauwi na ho kayo. Kasi ang maiwan kami na lang kay pahuli ko yung discussions dito. Alam mo kung bakit? Pagkain kami. My last meal was 12:30 kanina. Medyo ang hangin, tumutunog na yung butit. Lakas pa naman itong tiyan ko mag grrr. So, kung sino sa inyo may idagdag, we will suffer in hunger to solve a problem. But I'd like to, kung meron pa kayo, kung wala na, I will limit myself dito na lang sa... Nandyan si... ito, importante ito. Makinig na lang tayo kay Secretary Lorenzana. We saw each other doon sa typhoon. Lahat ng areas na tinamaan, kinumpleto ko talaga. Araw-araw yang lipad ako to the nearest airport, then nagka-chopper ako. So I was all around Visayas. Mabisitahan ko talaga lahat. And because I've been mayor for 23 years, lahat ng devastation, sunog, landslide, Ano ko na, kaya ito, nakakaawa talaga. So, ano ko, ano pa kami dito, whether I can give the money or not. Kasi, I ask for, sabi ko, maghanap kayo ng 4 billion, bigay nyo sa akin. Kay every family, bigyan ko ng 5,000. Po, hindi naman naubos yung pera. Sabi ko, ganito yung sunog. In sunog, typhoon, flooding, ano, the first thing that you should bring is water. Awan ko, ano yan, universal na nakita ko. Uhaw, tapos pagkain to follow. Then, you provide the shelter. Lahat karamihan naman, walang shelter. Kalau wala pa naman tayong shelter houses, may eskwelahan. Then, the school children will suffer for the days that they are not in school. Mga naman, walang matakbuhan. So, dyan sa eskwelahan. Mabutit na lang ngayon kasi may ano. Pero doon sa areas na ano, pati eskwelahan, warak. Sabi nila na hindi man ako masyado na nagkapagpasyal dyan sa Siargao. Daan lang. Last month, I went there to inaugurate a new gymnasium para sa college doon sa Siargao. Pag kinabukasan, nakita ko, nakatuwa. Tanginang udit na to. Masyadong, yung devastation really is, but I have, I have learned how to nurture so, marami na kasi nagyuyon. Huyab sa Bisaya. Ano sa Tagalog yan? Marami na sa inyo, mga 3 na nakita ko. So, maybe, kung wala na kayong maraming salamat sa inyo. At, Del, mag-report ka?
Yes, Mayor, yun lang, konting report lang tungkol doon sa mga activities ng armed forces sa mga nasalanta ng bagyo. Can I have my slides, please?
Del, sandali. Del, sandali. May I beg to interrupt you before I forget. There are reports na maraming nakakalusot dyan sa airport mismo na identified as yung iba nagbabayad para makalukso. So, ang nagdadala ng laro dyan is the Bureau of Quarantine. So, I think the director is sa mga quarantine dito.
Si Dr. Salvador.
Mr. President, we have Dr. Ferdy Salcedo, the head of Bureau of Quarantine, and Dr. Obet Salvador of the same. If they can be recognized, Mr. President.
Saan siya?
Good evening, Mr. President. Director Salcedo po here. Regarding that issue, sir, the Bureau of Quarantine has investigated the staff of Bureau of Quarantine, and we have not seen such case, sir, among the staff of Bureau of Quarantine.
So you investigated these reports. These reports obviously
yes,
dumating na rin sa opisina mo.
Opo, sir. Yes, President.
And what is the progress of your investigation?
We have not seen any case like this, sir, that the BOQ staff are involved into this kind of irregularities, Mr. President.
Yeah, pero maraming report na kasi nandito nakakalusot. So, anyway, you can conduct a report and that to be independent of other. I will task the Secretary of Justice ng NBI na lang, sir.
Mr. President, I have already discussed the matter with the NBI OIC chief this morning, and the DOJ has instructed the NBI to conduct a thorough investigation of these incidents, maybe starting all the way from the arrival area of in our international airports, all the way to the quarantine hotels, and even to the home quarantine, Mr. President.
Alam
Just
mo,
to
hindi
make sure-
mahirap for a person who has an eye in that kind of situation. NBI na lang. Paano mo lang. But sundin mo lang yung camera, makikita mo naman eh. Then you can understand by, the body language. Pati kung may na mag-report ng ipasa ko na sa iyo yung NBI, National Bureau of Investigation.
Meron na pong department order addressed to the NBI.
Already?
Mr. President. Yes.
That's good.
We issued it this morning, Mr. President.
Thank you. Alam mo, mga kababayan, may cellphone man kayo, huwag ninyong tawagan yung pag may alam kayo. Kasi it gets messy later on. Maimbestiga gaya ni Chua. You put yourself in a bind, actually. Pag mahuli ka, masundan yung camera eh. And body language, makikita doon I'm sure these things are very clear to them. Del, can we hear now Secretary Lorenzana?
Yes, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, colleagues.
Yes, sir.
Kababayan, magandang gabi. Hindi pa ako nakadalo dyan, Mayor, dahil na-expose ako sa positive na COVID. 4 na tao sa bahay namin ang positive. Anyway, Mr. President, here are the activities of the armed forces. Take up their activities to support or to help the devastated areas by the typhoon. There are 7,493 soldiers deployed. Ito po yung naka-deploy ng mga soldado natin sa regions 4B, 6, 7, 10, at saka 13. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ito naman po yung mga assets natin na naka-deploy din. 769 land transport, ito yung mga 6x6, 28 na air, C-130, C-295 at saka helicopters, at saka 27 naval assets sa mga barko. Ang mission po ng mga ito ay to support the transportation requirements of those who are making the relief operations. Kasama na rito yung mga relief goods na galing sa NDRMC, DSWD, DOH, DICT personnel, sa iba pa. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ito naman po yung mga nailikas nilang mga tao, na-transport ng mga tao, 461 individuals, yung ating Philippine Air Force, at saka 300,000 kilograms of supplies na kanilang na-transport. Next slide. Sa mga Philippine Navy ay nakapag-transport ng 1,225 na katao at 3 milyong kilograms o kilos ng supplies ang kanilang na-transport from other places, especially in Manila, going to Cebu, Bacolod, Bohol, and Siargao and Surigao. The Philippine Army were able to transport 12 truckloads of relief goods transported to Surigao and 9 truckloads of relief goods sent to Leyte. Next. Ito yung ating mga assets na na-utilize natin, yung Navy, yung malalaking barko natin na nagdala ng mga bigas, at saka kung ano-ano pa mga kagamitan para sa relief operations. Next slide. Next slide. Ito naman yung ibang assets natin, yung helicopters natin, yung Black Hawk helicopters ay nagamit ng gusto ngayon sa relief operations. Next. Ito yung mga 6x6 natin at saka balik. 6x6 natin at saka pakibalik. Ito, Mr. President, yung ating mga sasakyan trucks na magdala ng mga relief goods sa mga stricken areas. Kasama na rin dito yung mga engineering equipments natin na nag-clear ng debris sa mga kalsada. Ito po, patuloy na next slide. That's the last slide. Last slide. Ito po, Mr. President, patuloy na suporta at tutulong ang AFP sa recovery and rehabilitation phase ng affected communities. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Secretary Lorenzana. Meron pa kung may dagdag? Yes,
Mr. President, Secretary
Yes.
Duque.
may dagdag ka po. Go ahead. I can see you. Go ahead. I can see you.
Yes, sir. Secretary Duque here. I just want to respectfully remind Mr. President, there's another presentation coming from one of our experts, Dr. Edsel Salvania. He was invited to present and clarify a certain issue with regard to the use of a COVID-19 novel real-time PCR diagnostic test. It's a short presentation. He was requested by the Office of the President to make this clarification, Mr. President. May I ask that he be recognized, Dr. Edsel Salvania, Mr. President.
Dr. Salvania, okay. We'd be happy to hear you.
Yes, good. Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening to the members of the cabinet and my fellow advisors. Po. Can we have the first slide? Po? This will be a brief discussion. So there is this thing that's going around po na medyo nako-confuse kasi yung CDC daw nag-withdraw ng RT-PCR and they're saying that the RT-PCRs are no longer valid. This is fake news po, Mr. President. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ayan. So yung winidraw po ng CDC is just one brand of test po, yung brand of test that they produce. And sinabi naman po nila, they're retiring that test not because it falsely detects influenza or any other virus, but because they are focusing on other tests po. Wala po kinalaman yung ibang klaseng RT-PCR dito, and this only refers to one very specific test po. Next slide, please. And it did not fail. This test was not unreliable. The only reason they're removing it is because they have better tests na po and they have other tests that they want to focus on. Next slide, please. And so the confusion po kasi was that they have a new test that can also detect influenza aside from COVID po. Pero it doesn't. Yung old test po nila is really just for COVID and it does not become positive if there is the flu. Yun lang po kasi yung confusion point doon. Hindi po totoo that the influenza will give you a positive COVID test. That is fake news po. Next slide, please. And so, ang sabi rin po ng CDC, all the other tests that are on the market that are already FDA approved remain valid. And even the test that they withdrew is still valid. It does not become positive because of influenza. It only becomes positive if there is COVID po. So all the RT-PCR tests remain valid and there is no truth to the rumor that influenza will cause a positive COVID test po. Next slide. So there is actually a layman version of this. Yung USA Today po, they did a fact check. The CDC is withdrawing its PCR COVID-19 test, but this is not because it confuses viruses. Next slide, please. And ito po yung sinabi nila, they are pointing to a particular article na medyo na mix up po niya yung the claim. The claim is that CDC withdraws use of PCR test, admits it can't distinguish between flu and COVID-19. This is false po. This was a misinterpretation by one newspaper. Next slide, please. So, ang nangyari po is, as has been shown, they removed the test because they're replacing it with a different test. And it does not invalidate any PCR tests po for COVID-19. Next slide, please. So it does not confuse COVID-19 and the flu. Our tests na RT-PCR po are very specific for COVID. There are tests that can test for both COVID and the flu, but a COVID will not make a positive flu test and the flu will not make a positive COVID test po. They are separate and they do what they are designed to do. So nonsense po yung sinabi nung article na yon ng Gateway Pundit, which is they misunderstood the CDC announcement po. Hindi po talaga pwedeng mag-positive ang COVID test sa influenza because it does not have the correct genetic material to make the test positive po. Next slide, please. So the statement of USA Today is fake news po talaga na yung CDC withdrew the use of the PCR test because it had problems distinguishing between flu and COVID. It's withdrawing the test because there are already a lot of other tests available and it's upgrading its own test po. Next slide. So in summary, yung RT-PCR po, lahat po ng RT-PCR natin for COVID, it remains the gold standard for COVID diagnosis. The flu will not cause a false positive COVID-19 RT-PCR, and CDC is just withdrawing one brand of test. And it's not because it's useless, it's because it wants to replace it with another test, and also there are other tests on the market. And even that test that they're withdrawing, it still works against COVID. So all FDA-cleared kits remain valid for COVID-19 diagnosis, and we can be assured po that our RT-PCRs are reliable and they will not confuse COVID with the flu. Thank you, Mr. President.
Salamat po. Time to really call for, we have to eat, and for the guys in the panel, you are invited to go home. Kung tapos naman, kasi mag-discussion sila, kami-kami na lang dito because mawala kayo, because may mga slides rin sila. But if you want to just sit there and stare and look at each other, maybe to brighten our day for us. We are facing with people who are concerned with the problems of humanity. Thank you very much. I owe you one. So, kung may kalaban kayo lalo na drugista, tawagan mo ako. At yung pulis na Suwael, yan, ayaw ko rin yan. It breaks the, I don't know, but these are that kind of police. I cannot understand why they should be violating the law. Sa Davao, I do not allow police to drink liquor and in public. Baski hindi na kayo uniforme. Sabi ko, doon na lang kayo sa bahay ninyo mag-inuman. Not in public. Pangit tignan kasi kilala yung mga pulis. Tapos nandyan yung buti, nakapatong na yung beer na naubos. Ay, nako. That's bad. So, pero mababait ng pulis ko sa Davao. Disciplined. It's not because they're afraid of me, but they are disciplined. Maybe initially noon, But along the way, they have developed this paradigm of how to serve the people. Yun lang ho. Salamat at magkain muna kami. But if you are nearby and you want to partake of simple lang na pagkain, it's one ulam and one rice and soup. Sarap dito. Oo. Bong, note mo nga sila, Bong. I think that I can invite you for dinner one of these days. Tayo ba would constitute the prohibited crowd? Hindi naman siguro. May malaking, ito malaki man to. Magkain tayo. I will give you a opportunity to taste what isang ulam lang talaga, isang kanin pati sabaw. That's it. Walang steak dito kay magalit yung tao. Pera nila kinakain. So, hanggang dyan lang ako. Pero, we'll take a screenshot mo, Bong. One time we'll have dinner here in my office dito. Malaki mang building dito. Can eat here or on the other. Yun, Miss Jo, carpeted yun. Sa taas nito. Mamili lang kayo kung anong gusto niyo. Maybe I'll give you a tour of before I go, because baka you never know who will win. Then we would be deprived again to see how our money is being put to operation here in this these people. Kaya inimita ko kayo na magbisita dito, and I will give you personally a tour. Pero ako, hindi pa ako katulog dito at hindi ko pa napasyalan lahat. Even matatapos na lang ako yung museum, I do not know where. Hindi pa rin ako napunta. Pero doon sa museum na yon, nandoon yung tatay ko pati ako. Kasi naging cabinet member ang tatay ko sa panahon first term ni President Marcos. He was a Secretary of General Services. Wala na yun siguro ngayon. But that was his cabinet post. Kaya sabi nila yung muka daw dyan, nandyan yung tatay ko, pati ako. Pero sa bagay, buhay pa man ako, sabi ko, huwag mo ako ilagay sa museum. Nga buang. Baka matuloy yan. Sige ho, maraming salamat sa inyo. Ma'am, sa Mayor Abalos,